Welcome to Mishna study Masachet Shabbat Perek Yod Mishnah Aleph. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to discuss finding tefillin outside, right, in Reshut Rabim on Shabbat. So Motzeh tefillin, person finds tefillin outside, Machnisan zug zug. He can bring them in one pair at a time, right? Why one pair at a time? So according to Tanakama, right, Shabbat itself is a time where you wear tefillin. Right? Meaning according to Tanakama, it's appropriate to put on tefillin on Shabbat, and therefore, if a person finds tefillin, he goes ahead and he wears them at a pair at a time. He puts them on the yad and then the rosh, and he brings them, and he's able to carry them on Shabbat in that fashion because he's wearing them, so he's not carrying them in Reshut Rabim. Rabban Gamliel Omer shenaim shenaim. Right? Now over here, you could read this as up until 2-2, but he's really saying no. You're only allowed to bring them in two at a time, two specifically. Why two specifically? So a way how Rambam explains that Rabban Gamliel here is interesting. It's unique, actually, different than Bar Tanura. According to Rabban Gamliel, firstly, Shabbat is not a time where you put on tefillin, right? This is, by the way, how we, today we don't put tefillin because of Shabbat is not a time where we put on tefillin. Because there are Shavav, Ot, or Keshev, Ot, and therefore we don't put tefillin on Shabbat. Now, why two at a time? So because Shabbat is not a time for tefillin, he can wear them two at a time. You can't then wear them one at a time because then it's as if you're putting them on Shabbat. So what can you do? You could put them on two at a time. And how does this help? So actually, I haven't put note in my Mishnah over here from Rabbi Aluf when I looked at it, I guess a few years back. And he says, because if a person is putting on two at a time, no one's going to suspect him of wearing tefillin, because nobody wears tefillin, two tefillin on the rosh and two tefillin on the yad, right? At least back then. Today, some kubalim do it like this, right? But Harambam is saying it's not done like that. And therefore, if someone wears two tefillin at a time, no one's going to suspect him of wearing tefillin on Shabbat. So this is the way to bring them in if you find them outside in Reshut Rabim. Now, Bameh Dvarim Amurim, when do you do so? Bishanot, if they're old tefillin, right? Meaning what? They're old, they're tied, right? They're knotted. They have straps on them, right? Those are what's considered yeshanot, right? They've been used. Aval b'hadashot patur, right? If they're new tefillin, and what do you mean by new? Over here, let's say there's no straps on them, right? Or they're not tied, right? There's no knots on the tefillin, right? Then he's not hayav to go ahead and protect them, right? To save them, to watch over them. Because why? Why say that? Maybe it's just a kameh, right? Maybe it's just an amulet that someone they put Shem Hashem or some type of pisukim in a parchment or in leather boxes, and they're wearing this as a segula. And therefore, if you find them as such, right, new ones like that where they're not tied or no straps on them, then you're patur from leaving them, from bringing them in, from wearing them to bring them in on Shabbat. Now, mitzad sevatim, let's say you found them, or krachot, or kirichot, if you found them in bundles, right? These are two different types of bundles. Sevatim is from the language of Nut, right? Shol tashulu mirat sevatim, right? From the bundles, right? When they're talking about Boaz was telling his workers in the field, let some leket go, right? Let some, some extra grain go from the bundles, right? What's the difference between these tzevatim and kirichot? So it's just two different types of bundles. Tzevatim are when you have a literal group of a rosh and a yad together, and kirichot is when you have just bundles of them together, however they may be, many tefillin together. So what do you do if you found them as such? And what do you mean? You don't have enough time to go ahead and bring them in one pair at a time, right? Or two pairs at a time, according to the Rabban Gamliel, to bring them all into the house. So what do? You stay there, you wait till nightfall, and then you bring them in after Shabbat. But you wait with them out of the kavod to protect the tefillin. You wait with them. Uba sakana. Let's say it was a time of sakana, right? Let's say a time of a pogrom, or where the times where they didn't allow the Jews to perform the mitzvot, and it was dangerous for them to be for a Jew to be around these tefillin outside. So what would he do? Mechasan v'holechlo. He covers them and he leaves, and then he'll come back for them afterwards. Now this is specific when we're talking about a time where he's worried for his life. Right? We're not worried that someone may steal it from him. If someone worries someone may steal it from him, then he has another option. That is, he could take it take it less than 4 amot at a time, stop, or then walk less than 4 amot again, stop, walk less than 4 amot, and does do so until he reaches the Reshut Yachid. And that's our Mishnah. Halacha is not like Rabban Gamliel, right? Which is interesting. Meaning you only let to bring it one at a time. But what's interesting is we also know that Shabbat is not the time for tefillin, and it's interesting how that approach fits with not being posek like Rabban Gamliel and having to bring them in one at a time. But for that, you could look at the Mefarshim on Harambam and the Halacha.